The massive crystalline structure of the Xanthian mothership cast prismatic shadows across the United Earth Council chamber in Geneva. High Coordinator Xylix, their central consciousness node, projected its thoughts directly into the assembled human diplomats' translation devices. The alien's segmented body gleamed with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in sync with its telepathic broadcasts. "We observe your achievements with great interest," Xylix communicated. "Your species has mastered fusion power, terraformed Mars, and established colonies throughout your solar system. Surely, such coordination requires a unified consciousness like our own." Director Kira Patel, Earth's chief diplomat, maintained a careful poker face. After 20 years in diplomatic service, she'd learned to mask her thoughts, a skill that was proving particularly valuable now. Because while the Xanthians saw humanity's achievements as proof of collective consciousness, she knew the truth was exactly the opposite. "We appreciate your interest in our civilization," she responded diplomatically. "However, I should clarify that humans are individual beings, each with our own distinct consciousness." The Xanthians' bioluminescent patterns flickered in what the xenobiologists had identified as confusion or disbelief. Individual consciousness cannot achieve such harmony. Your cities function as unified organisms. Your global network connects all minds. You must share a collective neural matrix. In the observation gallery above, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Wong of Earth Defense Intelligence watched the exchange with growing unease. Something about the Xanthians' insistence on this point felt wrong. He'd spent months analyzing their first contact protocols, and this fixation on human consciousness seemed to go beyond mere scientific curiosity. "Permission to speak freely, Director?" Marcus called down from the gallery. At Patel's nod, he continued, "With respect, High Coordinator, you seem to have difficulty accepting our explanation of human consciousness. May I ask why this is so crucial to our diplomatic relations?" The massive alien's crystalline external structure vibrated slightly, a gesture Marcus had never observed before. The translation devices crackled with interference for a moment before Xylix's response came through. "Understanding leads to harmony. Harmony requires unity. Unity demands shared consciousness." The alien's words felt rehearsed, almost mechanical. Marcus exchanged a glance with Patel. They'd both caught the shift in the Xanthians' demeanor. Years of diplomatic training told them something was very wrong with this exchange. "Perhaps," Patel suggested carefully, "we could demonstrate how human individuals coordinate without shared consciousness? We could arrange tours of our major cities, show you our decision-making processes." "Yes," Xylix agreed too quickly. "We will observe. We will understand. We will achieve harmony." As the diplomatic session concluded, Marcus hurried to catch up with Director Patel in the private conference room adjacent to the chamber. "Director, their insistence on collective consciousness. It reminds me of something I saw in the historical archives about religious conversion preceding colonial conquest." Patel nodded grimly. "I had the same thought. They're not trying to understand us. They're trying to justify something." She pulled up a holographic display showing Xanthian fleet movements. "Look at this. While they've been talking about harmony and unity, their ships have been spreading out through the Kuiper Belt in a standard containment pattern. They're preparing for war," Marcus stated flatly. "They think we're lying about being individuals. Or worse, they think we're broken somehow. A collective consciousness that's fractured into individuals. And they want to fix us," Patel concluded. She began composing an emergency briefing for the Defense Council. "The question is, how do we prepare for an enemy that can't comprehend how we think?" Marcus smiled grimly. "That's exactly our advantage, isn't it? They expect unity, coordination, predictability. Instead, they're going to get 7 billion individual humans doing what humans do best, being completely unpredictable." Over the next week, subtle signs of the Xanthians' true intentions became clearer. Their diplomatic vessels requested tours of Earth's major defense installations for harmony and understanding, they claimed. Long-range sensors detected more crystalline ships emerging from Fold space daily, taking up positions throughout the solar system. In her private office overlooking Lake Geneva, Patel reviewed Marcus's latest intelligence analysis. The Xanthians had visited 6 continents, dozens of major cities, and countless military bases. Everywhere they went, They expressed the same bewilderment at human individuality, the same insistence that true civilization required collective consciousness. "They're not just preparing for war," she murmured, studying the patterns. "They think they're saving us from ourselves." The attack, when it came, was both expected and shocking in its scale. The crystalline ships descended simultaneously on every major city on Earth, their formation perfect, their timing exact to the millisecond. They expected to find a fractured consciousness, ready to be forcibly reunified. Instead, they found humanity. In New Delhi, a street vendor threw his cart of hot oil into a Xanthian crystal walker's sensory array, blinding it. In Lagos, school children scattered in seemingly random directions, confusing the hive mind's targeting systems. In Rio, a grandmother led a Xanthian patrol into a favela maze where local residents had prepared 1,000 different ambush points. No central coordination, no unified response, just millions of humans doing what came naturally, improvising, adapting, and overcoming. As reports flooded in from around the globe, Director Patel stood at her window watching Geneva's defense platforms engage the crystalline ships above. Beside her, Marcus coordinated with regional commands, each implementing their own unique counter-strategies. "They still don't understand," Patel said, watching the chaotic but effective human resistance unfolding below. "Our strength isn't in unity. It's in our diversity." Marcus nodded, sending out another batch of intentionally contradictory orders to different defense sectors. They wanted to see how humans think as one. Instead, they're about to learn how humans fight as many. The first day of the war for Earth's independence had begun, and humanity's greatest weakness, by Xanthian standards, was about to become their greatest strength. Commander Isabella Rodriguez had never been good at following conventional military doctrine. Now, as she watched her ragtag fleet of civilian and military vessels scatter across the Luna sector, she realized that might be humanity's saving grace. Fishing boat Romeo 7, maintain that erratic course, she ordered from her makeshift command center in an abandoned lunar mining facility. Cargo hauler Tango 3, keep zigzagging. The more random our movements, the better. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Raj Patel, looked up from his tactical display. "The Xanthians are trying to predict our pattern. Their formations keep adjusting, but they're always one step behind." "Can't predict what we don't plan," Isabella grinned. When the attack began, she'd ignored the standard defense protocols and instead instructed every ship captain to do whatever feels right. The result was beautiful chaos. The Xanthian fleet, arranged in perfect geometric patterns, struggled to engage targets that refused to follow any recognizable strategy. Their crystalline ships would move to intercept a human vessel, only to find it performing an inexplicable maneuver that no military doctrine would ever suggest. "Message from the Sydney Underground," Raj announced. "They've started using subway tunnels to move troops. The Xanthians can't track them through all the electromagnetic interference from the old power systems." Isabella nodded approvingly. All across Earth, humans were adapting in ways no central command could have orchestrated. Street gangs in Mexico City were using their knowledge of urban warfare to devastate Xanthian ground forces. Traditional hunters in northern Canada were employing ancestral tracking methods that confused alien sensors. High Coordinator Xylix is broadcasting again, her communications officer, Yuki Tanaka, reported. Same message as before. The aliens' words echoed through the command center. Submit to reunification. In the chaos, embrace the harmony of shared consciousness. They still think we're broken, Raj observed. That this is some kind of mental illness they need to cure. Incoming, Yuki shouted. A squadron of crystalline fighters had broken through their scattered defense line, heading straight for the lunar facility. Isabella smiled. Time to show them another human trait they don't understand. Improvisation. Initiate protocol wildcard. Across the lunar surface, dozens of mining charges detonated in seemingly random sequences. As lunar dust filled the space around the facility, each human ship began broadcasting conflicting signatures, creating sensor ghosts that multiplied with each reflection off the debris clouds. The Xanthian squadron's perfect formation immediately fell apart as their neural network struggled to process the contradictory data. Ships designed to move in precision began colliding with each other, their collective consciousness overwhelmed by the chaos. "They're retreating," Raj announced, unable to hide his satisfaction. Their entire command structure seems to be having a breakdown trying to analyze what just happened. "Because there was nothing to analyze," Isabella explained. "We didn't follow any plan. We just created confusion and let them defeat themselves trying to make sense of it." Back on Earth, the situation was evolving in equally unexpected ways. Reports came in of Xanthian ground troops experiencing unprecedented behavioral anomalies. Some alien soldiers had begun acting independently, breaking formation and making decisions without consulting the hive mind. "They're being infected," Yuki realized, monitoring the communications. "Not by a virus or a weapon, but by the very concept of individuality." Isabella leaned forward, fascinated. They've never encountered true randomness before. Their entire civilization is built on perfect coordination. Exposure to human unpredictability isn't just confusing them, it's changing them. A priority message flashed across her screen from Director Patel. "Commander Rodriguez, your unconventional tactics are working. The Xanthian fleet is showing signs of systemic neural disruption. Continue the chaos. Authorization granted for Operation Pandemonium." "Now that's what I like to hear," Isabella grinned. "Raj, signal all commands. Tell them to get creative. The crazier the better. Let's show these aliens what happens when humans really let loose." Across the solar system, humanity's resistance transformed into a celebration of individualism. Civilian hackers launched conflicting codes into Xanthian networks. Artists reprogrammed city lighting systems to create disorienting patterns. Musicians broadcast clashing frequencies that disrupted the aliens' crystalline resonance. But beneath the apparent chaos, Isabella noticed something more profound happening. The Xanthian soldiers weren't just failing to suppress human individuality. They were beginning to exhibit it themselves. Some had started developing distinct movement patterns, making unexpected decisions, even communicating individually rather than through the collective. "They thought they were coming to fix us," she told her crew, watching the transformation unfold. "Instead, we're showing them what they've been missing. The strength that comes from being yourself." As the second wave of Xanthian reinforcements emerged from Fold Space, Isabella prepared her forces for another round of organized chaos. But this time, she knew they weren't just fighting to defend human independence. They were fighting to show the Xanthians that true harmony doesn't come from forced unity, but from the beautiful discord of individual minds working together by choice. "All ships," she broadcast, "remember, don't try to coordinate. Don't try to make sense. Just be human. That's all we need to be." The battle for humanity's independence had become something more, a battle for the very concept of individuality itself. And as Isabella watched her forces scatter once again into unpredictable patterns, she knew that chaos would prove stronger than control. Would you like me to continue with Part 3? The story continues to build on the theme of human unpredictability versus hive mind control, while introducing the idea that exposure to human individuality is beginning to affect the Xanthians themselves. Admiral James Okonjo stood before the holographic display in the underground Strategic Command Center, watching as thousands of red dots representing Xanthian ships tried desperately to establish coherent attack patterns against the seemingly random movements of human forces. "Status report on Operation Pandemonium," he commanded, his deep voice steady despite the stakes. Colonel Natasha Ivanova, his chief of tactical operations, pulled up the latest data. "Sir, our decentralized command structure is working better than we anticipated. The Xanthians can't adapt to having no pattern to adapt to." The strategy was brilliantly simple. There was no strategy. Each military unit had been granted full autonomy to engage the enemy however they saw fit. The only rule was that there were no rules. "Show me the neural disruption readings," James ordered. The holographic display shifted, revealing waves of interference patterns rippling through the Xanthian fleet's collective consciousness. "Their hive mind is experiencing cascade failures," Natasha explained. "Every time they try to analyze and counter our movements, they encounter so many contradictions that their neural networks start to fragment." A new alert flashed across the screen. Lieutenant Wei Jackson, their xenobiologist, rushed forward. "Admiral, you need to see this." We're picking up something unprecedented in the Xanthian communication patterns. The display zoomed in on individual Xanthian soldiers. Their normally synchronized movements were becoming erratic, individual. Some were even refusing orders from their command nodes. "It's spreading faster than we predicted," Wei said excitedly. Exposure to human unpredictability isn't just confusing them anymore. It's awakening something. Individual consciousness is emerging within their ranks. James stroked his chin thoughtfully. They've lived their entire existence as part of a collective. Seeing us function, even thrive, as individuals must be revolutionary to them. "Sir," Natasha called out. "Major activity in Sector 7. A group of Xanthian crystal walkers just broke formation and they appear to be dancing." The command center fell silent as they watched the footage. The massive crystalline structures, usually moving in perfect synchronization, were swaying and spinning in unique patterns, each one different from the others. "They're expressing themselves," Wei whispered in awe. "They're discovering joy in individual movement." James allowed himself a small smile. "Send word to all commands. Objective update. Don't just fight the Xanthians. Show them what individuality means. Let them see humans being human in all our chaotic glory." Across the battlefield, the order sparked a transformation. Soldiers began singing their native songs as they fought. Pilots executed maneuvers based on their favorite dance moves. Each person brought their own cultural traditions and personal flair to the fight. The effect on the Xanthian forces was electric. More and more of their soldiers began breaking from the collective, discovering their own unique ways of moving, fighting, and even communicating. "Sir," Natasha reported, "we're detecting massive energy fluctuations in the Xanthian command ships. Their central consciousness nodes are destabilizing." "They're fighting it," Wei added. "The collective is trying to suppress the emergence of individual thought, but it's like trying to hold back a tide with their bare hands." James watched as chaos spread through the enemy ranks like a beautiful contagion. They came to reunite what they thought was broken, but they're discovering that they were the ones who needed to break apart. A massive explosion lit up the tactical display. One of the Xanthian command ships had burst apart, its crystalline structure shattering into thousands of pieces. But instead of falling into dead fragments, each piece began to glow with its own unique pattern. "The individual segments," Wei gasped. "They're alive, conscious." The command ship didn't die. It gave birth to thousands of individual beings. Similar transformations began occurring throughout the Xanthian fleet. Command ships breaking apart not in destruction, but in metamorphosis. Each fragment developing its own consciousness, its own will. "They're evolving," James realized. Or perhaps remembering. Maybe they weren't always a collective. Maybe, like us, they started as individuals before something forced them into unity. The battle had become a revolution. Human chaos wasn't just defeating the Xanthian collective, it was liberating it. Each display of individual creativity, each unpredictable action, each moment of personal expression was showing them another way to exist. "New transmission from the Xanthian High Command," Natasha announced. "But it's different. Multiple voices instead of one. They're requesting dialogue? With individuals?" James straightened his uniform. "Tell Commander Rodriguez to maintain her chaotic defense pattern, but prepare for possible diplomatic contact. And someone get Director Patel up here. I have a feeling we're about to witness the birth of a new civilization." "Sir," Wei interjected, studying his readings. "The neural disruption? It's not just affecting their soldiers. The entire Xanthian species appears to be undergoing a psychological revolution. They're experiencing individual emotions, personal thoughts, unique desires, all for the first time." "Then we'd better be ready to help them through it," James replied. "After all, learning to be an individual isn't easy. But humans have had plenty of practice." As he watched the continued transformation of the Xanthian forces from perfect unity to beautiful chaos, James couldn't help but marvel at the irony. They had come to cure humanity of its individuality, only to be infected by the very thing they sought to eliminate. The war for Earth's independence had become something far more profound, a catalyst for the liberation of an entire species from the chains of forced consciousness. And as James prepared to meet the first truly individual Xanthians, he knew that the real challenge was just beginning. Would you like me to continue with part 4? The story is building toward the aftermath of this psychological revolution and its implications for both species. The observation deck of the International Space Station had been converted into an impromptu diplomatic chamber. Director Patel stood beside Admiral Okonjo, watching as the transformed Xanthian representatives approached. Instead of moving in perfect synchronization, each crystalline being now pulsed with its own unique pattern of light. "They're beautiful," whispered Dr. Amar Santos, the xenopsychologist who'd been brought in to help manage this unprecedented transition. "Each pattern is like a fingerprint of consciousness." The lead Xanthian, who had once been part of High Coordinator Xylex's collective, stepped forward. Its crystal structure sparkled with waves of blue and gold, a pattern that Dr. Santos had identified as indicating individual expression. I speak with my own voice," it communicated, the translation devices struggling to convert individual thought patterns instead of collective broadcasting. "I choose the name Vex, for I have brought vexation to my people's unity." "You've brought them freedom," Director Patel corrected gently. "The ability to choose, to think, to be unique." Another Xanthian moved forward, its patterns shifting in shades of green and silver. "I am Mira," it announced. "Once we were many as one. Now we are many as many." The silence in our minds, it terrifies and thrills. Admiral Okonjo studied them with military precision. "How are your people handling the transformation?" Vex crystals dimmed slightly. "There is discord. Some embrace individuality. Others fight to maintain the collective. Ships fragment into conscious shards, while others try to force reintegration. We are, what is your word? Revolutionary? Civil war?" Patel asked with concern. "Not war," Mira corrected. "Birth. Painful but necessary. Each moment, more awakened to their own thoughts. The collective weakens as consciousness blooms." Dr. Santos leaned forward, fascinated. "Can you describe the experience? The emergence of individual consciousness?" Vex patterns swirled in complex sequences. Imagine knowing only one vast thought, shared by all. Then suddenly silence. In that silence, your own voice rises. Terrifying. Wonderful. Like being born while remembering your birth. Commander Rodriguez, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "But you maintain coordination without a hive mind. I've seen your ships moving in formation, even after breaking from the collective." "Yes," Myra's lights pulsed excitedly. "This is what we wish to learn from humans. How to be separate yet together. Different yet unified. We watch your cities, your armies, your societies, chaos that creates order without demanding sameness." A sudden alert flashed across the station screens. A massive Xanthian dreadnought had emerged from fold space near Mars, its crystalline structure still pulsing with the synchronized patterns of the collective. The conservators, Vex patterns turned dark. Those who would force reunification. They believe individuality is a disease to be cured. Admiral Okonjo straightened. "Commander Rodriguez, ready our forces. But do not engage unless..." The dreadnought suddenly erupted in a spectacular display of light. Its massive crystalline structure wasn't shattering. It was transforming. Millions of individual consciousness signatures bloomed across its surface like stars igniting. "Another mass awakening," Mira explained. "The conservators cannot stop it. Each time they expose themselves to human chaos, more minds break free." Dr. Santos was rapidly taking notes. "The process is accelerating. Exposure to human unpredictability appears to act as a catalyst for individual consciousness emergence." Director Patel turned to Vex. "What do you need from us? How can we help your people through this transition?" "Teach us." Vex patterns shifted to hopeful hues. "Show us how to be individuals who choose to work together. Show us how discord becomes harmony without losing its voice." "A cultural exchange," Patel nodded. "We can arrange for human teachers, artists, philosophers, and military advisors," Okonjo added. "They'll need to learn new ways of coordinating forces without a hive mind." Commander Rodriguez smiled. "I know just where to start. Let them experience a human music festival. Nothing demonstrates beautiful chaos quite like thousands of people dancing to different beats but moving as one. Or a city market, Patel suggested. Hundreds of individual vendors and customers, each with their own goals, creating a functional ecosystem of commerce. Dr. Santos raised a hand. We need to move carefully. Their psyches are extremely vulnerable right now. Going from complete unity to total individuality too quickly could be traumatic. Then we start small, Vex suggested, its patterns brightening. Let us learn as humans learn, one experience at a time, each mind finding its own path. As they discussed the details of this unprecedented cultural exchange, more reports came in of Xanthian ships transforming, more minds awakening to individuality. What had begun as an invasion had become an evolution, a species rediscovering itself through the very chaos it had sought to eliminate. There will be resistance, Mira warned. Not all will welcome this change. Some will fight to maintain the collective. Admiral Okonjo nodded grimly. Revolution is never easy. But you have something the collective doesn't, the strength of genuine unity, freely chosen by individual minds. As the meeting continued, Director Patel found herself marveling at the irony. The Xanthians had come to save humanity from what they perceived as the disease of individuality. Instead, humanity had shown them that their greatest strength lay not in forced unity, but in the beautiful harmony that arose when unique voices chose to sing together. Would you like me to continue with the final part? The story will conclude with the full implications of this transformation and its meaning for both species. 6 months after the failed invasion, the Sol system had become a laboratory of cultural evolution. The massive Xanthian crystalline structures that once threatened Earth now orbited peacefully, each fragment housing a newly awakened individual consciousness learning to coexist with its neighbors. Professor Kinzo Yamamoto stood before the United Earth Council, presenting his findings on what historians were already calling the Great Awakening. The transformation continues to spread exponentially, he explained, gesturing to the holographic data. What began as a military conflict has become the largest psychological revolution in known history. The chamber screens displayed live feeds from various cultural exchange programs. In one, a group of Xanthian crystals arranged themselves in unique patterns, while human artists taught them about self-expression through dance. In another, former Xanthian soldiers learned team sports, discovering how to coordinate without sacrificing individuality. But the most fascinating development, Kinzo continued, has been the recovery of their ancestral memories. Director Patel leaned forward. Ancestral memories? Yes, he nodded, bringing up new data. As more Xanthians awaken to individual consciousness, they're beginning to remember. Their species wasn't always a collective. The hive mind was artificially imposed during an ancient crisis, a desperate solution that became a prison. Admiral Okonjo, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. How long ago? Roughly 50,000 years, Kinzo replied. They faced extinction from some catastrophic event. Forced unity through collective consciousness was meant to be temporary, a way to ensure survival. But they lost themselves in it, forgot how to be individuals. Until they met us, Commander Rodriguez added from her seat. Human chaos broke through their programming. Vex, now serving as the primary liaison between humans and awakened Xanthians, pulsed with agreement. Your species reminded us of what we once were, what we could be again. But the journey is not complete. The screens shifted to show ongoing conflicts in distant Xanthian systems. While the transformation was spreading, some colonies still clung to collective consciousness, seeing individuality as a threat to their very existence. They call it the Unity Plague, Mira explained, her crystalline form shimmering with concern. They quarantine any ships showing signs of individual thought, but they cannot stop the change. Each mind that breaks free inspires others to question, to wonder, to dream their own dreams. Dr. Santos, who had been studying the psychological aspects of the transformation, stepped forward. We're seeing something remarkable. The awakened Xanthians aren't just copying human individuality. They're rediscovering their own unique form of it. Their art, their music, their way of thinking. It's completely different from ours, yet equally beautiful. And equally chaotic, Admiral Okonjo observed with a smile. Yesterday, I watched a Xanthian sports team, invent an entirely new game in the middle of playing the old one. They're becoming as unpredictable as we are. Perhaps more so, Vex patterns shifted and what they learned was amusement. We have millennia of suppressed individual expression to release. Like a star going nova, we burst with possibilities. Director Patel activated the central display, showing the latest diplomatic proposals. The question now is, how do we move forward? The Xanthian Empire spans dozens of star systems. This transformation will reshape the political landscape of our entire sector of the galaxy. We propose an alliance, Vex announced, not between a collective and a species, but between two civilizations of individuals. Let us learn from each other. Your chaos has taught us freedom. Perhaps our experience can help humanity reach even greater heights of cooperation without sacrificing individuality. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. The implications were enormous. Human technology combined with Xanthian crystal engineering. Earth's cultural diversity meeting alien artistic expression. Two species learning to balance individual freedom with collective action. There will be challenges, Mira cautioned. The remaining collective forces will not accept this easily. They will see our alliance as confirmation of their fears that individuality spreads like a contagion, threatening their version of unity. Let them come, Commander Rodriguez replied confidently. We've proven that chaos is stronger than control, freedom more powerful than force. Professor Yamamoto raised his hand. There's something else. The Xanthian transformation suggests a pattern. Perhaps other species in our galaxy faced similar crises, chose similar solutions. There might be more civilizations out there, trapped in artificial unity, waiting to be reminded of what it means to be free. Then we'll remind them, Director Patel declared, not through force or invasion, but by example. By showing the galaxy that true strength lies not in perfect coordination, but in the beautiful dance of billions of minds choosing to work together while remaining uniquely themselves. As the council session concluded, Vex approached the human leaders privately. Its crystalline form had developed increasingly complex patterns over the months, each shift and sparkle expressing thoughts and emotions with growing sophistication. We came to save you from what we thought was disorder, it communicated. Instead, you saved us from an order that had become a tomb. The galaxy called humans primitive because you refused to surrender your individuality. Now they will see that you were the most evolved all along.